The deal that freed an American prisoner of war is under intense questioning on Capitol Hill. Lawmakers are grilling the U.S. Defense Secretary about the risks of trading terrorist suspects for hostages. VOA's Jeff Selden has been watching the proceedings and now joins us live from the Cannon House. Hello, Jeff.
Hi, Vincent. How are you?
Fine. So what has been happening this morning up to this point? How are the proceedings?
Well, Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel gave a passionate defense of the administration's efforts to retrieve Sergeant Bowe Bergdahl from the hands of the Taliban and return him to U.S. custody. And at one point, he went as far as to quote a former Central Command general on just how important this is. Let's take a listen.
The bottom line is we don't leave people behind. That is the beginning, and that is the end of what we stand for.
Defense Secretary Hagel also talked a lot about how the U.S. does not negotiate with terrorists and says that they didn't negotiate directly with the Taliban. He made it a point to tell lawmakers that they talked specifically with the government of Qatar, which gave the U.S. various assurances about how the Gitmo 5, as they're being called, the 5 high-risk Taliban detainees at Guantanamo Bay, would be treated and handled once they were released in exchange for Sergeant Bergdahl's freedom, saying that there are assurances on travel and other assurances they have on information sharing that he would detail at a later time during a closed-door part of the hearing. He also said that this was an exceptional case and exceptional circumstances which forced the administration to act very quickly, but they saw this as a fleeting chance, one last best chance to get Bergdahl back home.
For some, they fall back to what they see as an old U.S. principle of not negotiating with hostage takers. What is the difference between, say, the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and other groups?
Well, it's interesting. Defense Secretary Hagel made it a point to say that Bergdahl was not a hostage. He was not, and they weren't dealing with any hostage takers. He said that Bergdahl had been in a war zone. He was a combatant, and he had been taken by an enemy force, that force being the Taliban, which at one point controlled Afghanistan. So he drew a very fine line on how that was, but he was adamant at later parts during the hearing under questioning from members of Congress that the U.S. did not negotiate with terrorists, but that it was extremely important that they do everything they could to bring Bergdahl back home and not leave him in the hands of an enemy force.
But from what you're hearing, what could be the possible implications of this exchange?
Well, as passionate as Defense Secretary Hagel's response was to many of these questions and his defense of how the administration acted, lawmakers are still extremely concerned about what precedent this could set, because in the minds of many, there isn't much of a difference between the Taliban, groups like Al-Qaeda offshoots, and many of the lawmakers pointed out to the Defense Secretary, look, this could set a dangerous precedent. Our U.S. troops could be at risk. We still have troops in Afghanistan, they told him. There are also U.S. troops stationed around the world. These troops, our personnel, could be at risk because now groups like the Taliban, groups like Al-Qaeda could say, hey, if we take them, we may be able to negotiate. We may be able to get some concessions in return. One lawmaker said that probably terrorists were watching the proceedings on TV and celebrating because of how the U.S. acted.
And terrorists watching, let's turn to Nigeria, where Boko Haram terrorists are holding on to about 200 or more girls, or actually over 200 girls. Up to this point, what do you know about the U.S. assistance to the Nigerian authorities?
Well, the U.S. has been very clear on how it's trying to help find these girls, saying that it is a priority and it is extremely important that this be done. But the U.S. military has drawn the line about how it's going to help. It says it will not put boots on the ground. What it has done, though, it has been flying reconnaissance missions, flying a variety of drones and manned aircraft over parts of Nigeria, looking for any traces that it can find of the girls. It recently even sent a U.S. Air Force team to Chad, where it's flying some of the Predator drones in an effort to contribute. In addition, there's a team on the ground at the U.S. Embassy in Abuja, which is consulting constantly with the Nigerian government and with other governments that are trying to help, including the British and the French.
Well, Jeff, thank you very much for your reporting. That's Jeff Selden of the Voice of America reporting live from Capitol Hill.